I'm not saying anything.
Why
do British people say Isaiah wrong? That's the question I have.
That's not the question.
Yeah, it seems like there's
Hello, and welcome to the Christchurch Fox Chapel podcast. The fastest growing conservative, evangelical, charismatic, Anglican podcast in the entire Fox Chapel area.
So, should we talk about as you just sighed earlier, or as I sighed earlier, we were talking about the pronunciation of Isaiah, or like we would say in the word said, or versus Isaiah as they say in England, they say sighed as well. Like, and then he sighed, right?
Yes, we do say that. I hit record because I felt like I was going to enjoy this conversation, and I thought it should start now on air.
And you discover that your assistant is two-faced.
Yeah, I think I've been set up a little bit. But you said just before I clicked the record button that you think I'm right about something. So I thought I'd get this on air quickly.
Yeah, I do think you're right.
Thank you.
I think that...
What about?
I think that Jesus of Nazareth really is who he says he is.
He is.
And I think the gospel really does have a relevance and a potential for all of life, and the power to transform anyone.
How many of the articles of religion do you believe?
I believe all 38 of the 39 articles of religion.
That's right.
And really, we agree on everything except for... sometimes my boss tends to mispronounce things, but other than that, this would be qualified as racist. This could get me canceled. Now I just ruined the podcast.
So, no, because this happened yesterday. At that funeral we were at, there was another English woman there. And so as I walked into through the door, this lady that greeted me said, that must be your wife over there.
Yes.
I was like, no. Not all English women are my wife. We're not all related.
Yeah. It's like, did you say, in fact, I'm married to an American woman?
I did. Yeah. I did.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. Just one of those little moments of like, oh, okay.
I wonder if statistically, actually, the number of Brits over here on this side of the pond, there's actually more married to Americans because it's easier to immigrate here.
I mean, it's at seminary. Tons and tons of people had married an American.
Really?
Yeah, it was really common.
Why?
I don't know. I know why we married them. America's great and you've all got your own teeth. I've got no idea why they married us. That still remains a mystery to me.
Well, there's being... I think in the American mind, there's like, well, we got to get some intelligence into the gene pool.
There's no more intelligence. I think there's a semblance of it. We tend to think that other people are all sorts of things. My previous church, Red Hill, I was just talking to the vicar there, this week, and there's a big American evangelical kind of Bible translating charity there in town.
Really?
And so the church is full of Americans. And they're like in leadership and reading the lesson, serving communion within like about 2 weeks of arriving, because there's a sense there in the congregation. As soon as they start speaking, these people are holy, they're charismatic, they're lively.
That's so weird.
Like, we just assume that those Americans are far, far more, up for it and switched on than we are.
I mean, it's exactly the inverse here.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that happens. Well, we have prejudice that kind of works in a positive and negative way about things, about people.
Perhaps too, that it's like there's a stereotype of like a certain like folks from Asian countries being good at math here in the United States.
Yeah, you get that kind of thing.
But it could also be that the folks who have had the gumption and who are self-starters enough to come over and start life in a new country are in fact very intelligent.
No, I think that's one of the things
people who are capable.
I think it's one of the things that's great about America. If you, whatever the circumstances, whether you were fleeing something or deliberately moving here to make your life better, you were a go-getter if you came here.
Yeah.
It wasn't just people, it wasn't the lazy that came to America. So I think there is a bit of that goes on.
So I'll be kind, since it's since it's about Christmas.
Okay.
It's nearly Christmas.
You're going to tolerate the way that I say the great prophet's name.
I'm going to say that what I was saying before the podcast and why we started it so soon is that I said
Abruptly,
why do Americans all say Isaiah and English say Isaiah or Isaiah?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like Isaiah is right. That is what I said. I'll go on the air. I'll publicly say and proclaim from the housetops what I said in secret. And because it does seem like like Isaiah would be the right way to do it. That being said, if I'm reading the scripture in church, I'm going to say Isaiah.
Yeah, and I'm going to try and be all things to all men, so I try and pronounce it the local way. I do my best, but then it could look a bit disingenuous. Interestingly, though, this conversation has been about things not always seeming like they really are, and assumptions and things like that. We have a bit of an assumption, if you like, in Matthew 11, Isaiah 35. You can read Matthew 11, as we will do, fairly superficially, and that's great. You can get a ton out of it. But if you dig into the background, you're going to get even more out of it.
Yeah.
So Matthew 11, short version.
I think I'm prepared. This podcast started very rapidly. It was before I was even ready, but
yeah, you didn't even put your headphones on.
No,
I didn't know that I was.
No, it just took off. And I was like, oh, I missed the train. Okay, let's go though. Matthew chapter 11.
When John heard in prison about the deeds of the Christ, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?" Which is really funny.
Yeah,
it's really funny.
Like, should we keep our eyes out for someone else? Was I wrong?
Because there's something about Jesus that doesn't look right, or several things about Jesus that don't look right. I would imagine the number one thing that doesn't look right is the fact that John's in jail.
Yeah, I mean, why am I not winning?
The Messiah comes to set the captives free. I was free till you came along, and now I'm in jail. So it doesn't look good. And so John actually sends his disciples, his own folks, out to go and see Jesus and get some information. What's going on? And Jesus answered him, verse 4, "Go and tell John what you hear and see." Test the witness evidence, if you like. That's kind of good. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have good news preached to them. Blessed the one who's not offended by me, which is one of your favourite words. It's scandalized.
Oh, is it really?
It's the scandalon, yeah.
Scandalon. The stumbling block.
The stumbling block.
Blessed is the one who doesn't stumble over the stumbling block of me.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes,
yeah,
blessed is the one who doesn't stumble over the stumbling block of me, who isn't sort of so put out by the reality of the Messiah and the Messiah's failings by our standards of what he should be doing.
Yeah.
That you end up kind of messing up the whole thing.
Oh, random idea. We should have a podcast where we talk about our favorite Greek words, our favorite Bible words.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
That'd be cool.
It would be good, wouldn't it?
Dibs on scandalizo.
I think
Scandalon.
I quite like my friend James Harding at seminary, who mistranslated a passage and said, "Behold, the holy sheep of God." That's probably one of my favourites. Our Greek tutor very patiently said, "I think you mean lamb."
Oh, so good. So is there more to the passage?
So superficial reading. I'm doing all these things, and these are kind of impressive things.
Yeah.
So I'm doing okay. That would be enough, I think, to convince many people that that Jesus is legit. And side point, Jesus has done all of these things, which is quite a length to go to if really what he's trying to do is just persuade John that he really is who he thinks he is.
Okay, let's go through the checklist real quick. The blind receives sight,
Mm-hmm.
check, he did that. The lame walk,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he made the guy that they lowered through the roof, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leopards are cleansed.
Yeah.
Not leopards, lepers.
Maybe leopards.
And the deaf hear, yeah, check, he did that. Right?
Yeah.
He made the deaf hear.
And yeah, absolutely. And sometimes in Greek the word mute, I think, can imply kind of speech or hearing. It's not quite clear. It could be both or either. But yeah.
The dead are raised up. Yep, check. The poor have good news.
Yeah, there's that widow at Nain and with the dead son, and there's Lazarus.
Yeah.
And there's the girl with Jairus's daughter.
Talitha.
Koum. Yeah, Talitha Koum, little girl got up.
So my friend one of my best friends just had a daughter and he named her Talitha.
Does that mean little girl in Aramaic?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But I think her middle name is Rise.
Nice.
It's cool. Yeah,
that's really
very
cool.
interesting.
I love it. That's really cool. So there's definitely all these things happening, and the poor have good news preached to them.
Yeah.
Just a little tiny bit. He says poor and he says blessed. It reminds me a bit of the Sermon on the Mount.
I mean, the good news preached to the poor is the Sermon on the Mount, I think.
Right.
Like that's like, yeah, I just heard somebody quote Kurt Vonnegut that he said, if it weren't for the message of radical mercy in the Sermon on the Mount, I wouldn't want to be a human. I would rather be a snake. That's what Kurt Vonnegut said.
That's awesome.
I think it is. It's this message of incredible liberation and mercy.
So the Messiah will come to set the captives free. John, who was free, is now captive. That's messing with his categories rather a lot. He sends a message to Jesus. Jesus says, well, look what I'm doing. I'm doing all these great things. And that ought to be enough to persuade you that you don't need to go looking for another. I think that's really great. And that's, if you like, a fairly superficial reading of it. We could go a little bit deeper still and talk about ourselves and say, well, this gives me hope because this is a comprehensive list of healings here.
Yeah.
And I think I could probably find my situation is healable by Jesus too.
I think we're often scandalized by him too, because we see him do all. Oh, am I jumping ahead?
No, go for it. I think it's a good one.
Like all that stuff is true, and yet life is not resolved, and oftentimes we are in that place of waiting. We're like John in prison. Like
or even worse. Maybe we've suffered for the sake of the gospel.
Yeah,
we've stood up and we've testified to who Jesus is, and it's got us in trouble. And a serious question we need to ask in that position is: was it worth it? I mean, I better be sure I back the right horse here.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said there in this little passage alone about who Jesus really is and what it costs us to point to him, and how there's good news in a sense to those who are absolutely desperate, but sometimes those who are free and end up getting locked up. So it's a pretty fascinating passage, but it isn't just this. This is very clearly a reference to our Old Testament lesson for the weekend. And I think it's once we start delving into the prophetic, from the Old Testament prophet whose name is controversially mispronounced all around the world.
Yeah.
Isaiah. We're going to see a bit more. Let's have a look at it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. Isaiah
35.
Do you like what I did there?
That was beautiful.
Isaiah.
And rather than reading it out, we'll jump around a little bit in the first 10 or so verses. But I'll just read this from verse 5. So this is Isaiah the prophet. I think it was probably written, let's say, 700 years before Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Little recap. We've talked about prophecies, Old Testament prophecies, how to read them.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, often they use epic imagery in the same way that a film producer will use tunes to remind you of earlier or parts of the story. Luke and Leia's theme, Vader's theme, the Hobbit theme, whatever. Mordor's theme. So words like wilderness, words like abundance, these are going to, slavery, Egypt, whatever, they're going to fire off images and remind us of the big story.
Another thing, I think we need to grant that they sometimes do use exaggerated images, and that's okay. Like they're allowed.
Epic, yeah.
Jesus does that, right? He's like, gouge out your own eye.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't literally mean gouge your eye out.
Right.
He means you need to go to that to the most extreme length.
So epic hyperbole, apocalyptic imagery.
Yeah.
Right. And then we also talked a little bit your mountain idea.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give us your mountain idea in a sentence or two?
Every prophecy has an immediate, an intermediate, and an ultimate fulfillment. So there's multiple levels on which oftentimes God, it's almost like he's giving us like a clue as to what he's going to do. And enough to kind of get us meditating on it, and then he will fulfill it in multiple different ways.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Almost like if you're looking at mountains, this is not a sentence anymore, but if you're looking at
it's like one of Paul's sentences.
What's that?
It's like one of Paul's sentences.
Yeah,
perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's biblical, right? You're looking at what looks like a single wall of mountains, and it turns out it's actually like a scattered mountain range with plains in between them.
Right.
It can work on that level.
I love that. So immediate, intermediate, ultimate fulfillments of one prophecy. For example, you're going to go to Babylon. It's going to be horrible. You're going to get back to Judah. Jesus is going to come and bring you out of the Babylon of your life under Rome, but also your life in sin. And he's going to return at the end and deliver you from all of this, what Cranmer called the naughty world. So it's all Rome. And I think that's whatever the bless you version of a cough is. I'd say that to you.
Thank you.
But what's also intriguing about Isaiah, the book, is it is itself split into kind of 3 bits. So you've got the first, I think 39.
1 to 39?
Yeah, chapters that really are kind of about before exile in Babylon and kind of the immediate context of Judah. And then Assyria comes in, and Sennacherib and bad guys, but it's before the big thing. Then you've got the intermediate bit, actually, which is really addressed to Babylon, where the Daniel thing, where they're under Nebuchadnezzar and they're under the three kings, and Daniel the lion's den and all that stuff, and they're going to come back to the promised land.
What part of Isaiah is that?
That's chapters 40 through to the next bit.
Yeah. Okay.
66.
Well, there's 66 all.
So 40 through to I don't know. Can't remember.
Yeah. So the next promises to the folks in exile.
Let's say 15 chapters or so. I have to look it up. And then the last bit is actually looking at the ultimate kind of what Jesus is all about and the end of all things. So Isaiah, the book, is actually divided very crudely into immediate, intermediate, and ultimate. That's and yet also all of the prophecies within it, even if they are about, say, the immediate, they're also going to have pre-echoes of the ultimate as well. So it's a swirling book that's a bit difficult to understand unless you've done a 10-week series on Joel. Then it's pimps easy, as we would say in England.
What I've noticed, I did a couple poetry courses in college, and I started to learn you have to be kind of okay with not exactly knowing everything that something means at a moment. It's almost like you kind of have to keep passing over it and keep going through it, almost like you need to read the Bible multiple times. I know that's crazy, isn't it? Because we really only need to read it once. We think
this is so good because this relates to that conversation we had the other day about the kind of the 7-second meme and the kind of YouTube reels and the TikTok thing. Yeah. Where our kids are being trained and discipled by their devices to want every plot to be resolved in 7 seconds.
Yeah.
And when you have 7 seconds to make someone laugh and get their attention, you basically stick a bucket on your head and run into a wall, and then you're on to the next hilarious clip.
And people get frustrated when they read through a part of the Bible and they don't understand what it means, and it's like, oh well, I can't believe this doesn't make sense to me. Well, sometimes you just kind of have to put that in your back pocket.
Be patient.
And if it's really bothering you, look it up. Sometimes you gotta, if I'm preaching on it, I need to understand as much as I can.
Right.
But when I'm in my daily Bible reading, there's things all the time that I'm I don't know what that means.
I'll come back to it.
I don't have time to dive into it right now.
Yeah, I do that as well.
And you kind of are glossing, and every time I read, I get a little bit deeper into it and I understand it a little bit more. And it's kind of it almost, the whole image starts to come into focus in a way that it didn't before.
Yeah.
And so it really, it's meditation literature. It takes patience to understand it.
I have a section of notes so I write little notes and I do Bible study, and I have a section called 2 Question, which just basically is stuff that I'm not sure what it means. And I'll come back to it. And what I notice is I haven't actually come back to any of them, but it seems it's a start. So all of that is to say that this immediate, simple account in Matthew is actually, although it's a sense unit of its own and it stands alone and it's worthy of studying on its own, Jesus is in fact quoting Isaiah. Isaiah, being a prophetic book, is going to be saying something that's immediate, intermediate, and ultimate. And in verse 5, Isaiah 35:5, it says, "Then," I don't know when, but then, at some mysterious time, "the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped, then the lame man shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute shall sing for joy." So the prophecy 700 years-ish before Jesus comes along says that someone is going to come along and do all of these things.
Yeah.
And then he does. So...
Oh, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Back a verse, lower side of verse 4. Behold, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with a vengeance. With the recompense of God, he will come and save you. Verse 5, then the eyes of the blind shall be opened. So maybe the then is referring to when God comes with recompense and vengeance to save. Like this is so maybe John the Baptist is like, wait a second, God's coming. I expect God to come with recompense and vengeance to save. That's the kind of Messiah I'm expecting. And then we see the eyes of the blind opened. Right. Jesus fits this, but it's like, what about the recompense and vengeance part, guys?
Right, something's off.
Yeah.
It looks like Jesus, and in fact, it looks even more like Jesus looks even more like the Messiah now that he's doing these things.
Yeah.
And yet, where's the recompense and vengeance? Where's the justice? It is a great question that John rightly asks.
Yeah.
So go back to the beginning of chapter 35. It says the wilderness, major tune, right? Major biblical theme.
Yeah.
The dry land shall be glad. There's going to be rejoicing, blossoms, crocuses, abundance, joy, singing, majesty, and glory. So Eden, the promised land, the temple, heaven.
Is the crocus a wilderness plant, or is it like a...
I think it's a 70s plant.
Oh, is it?
Mum had a lot of crocus, I remember.
Oh, did she?
Oh, yeah. Huge amount.
English 70s. That's interesting.
So I don't really think of England as a dry place.
No, that doesn't sound... Yeah, my study Bible doesn't say anything about the crocus.
I'm afraid I can't offer you any crocus...
That's okay.
...based theology. But I guess they're nice.
You already did in that magnificent sermon that you just preached.
Oh, on crocuses.
Yeah, you already gave me the stuff.
I imagine that crocus, because they grow... This is... so please, asterisk, do Google it. But I imagine that the crocus likes a wet climate and they don't normally come up in wildernesses.
Yeah, that sounds... texturally, I get that sense as well.
Okay. It does talk about water later on.
Yeah.
So streams in the desert. So I think that we've got the idea is that basically this dry wilderness place of nothingness is becoming the presence of God.
Yeah.
Right. So then he says in verse 3, strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. And say to those who have an anxious heart, be strong, fear not. That's John. That's John, isn't it? Who's getting second thoughts and doubts and fear.
Whoa. Okay. You mean John is the one with the weak hands and the feeble knees who has an anxious heart?
I think so.
And Jesus is saying, and John would have known Isaiah 35 like the back of his hand, because let's be honest, he's John the Baptist. He knows the scriptures like crazy.
And last week he was quoting Isaiah 40.
Yeah.
Which says what? There's going to be a voice in preparing the way in the wilderness.
Yeah.
For the glory of God. So I mean, to me, it almost feels like a coded secret message that he's sending to John. Almost like this whole the actual healing of the blind and the lame and the deaf and the raising of the dead is a huge setup that enables Jesus to be able to reference Isaiah 35, which then pulls in from memory all of these other things.
Like, hey John, don't freak out.
Don't freak out, man.
It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be cool. So then what's going to happen next is the great question. Hopefully John is in jail thinking, well, I've got nothing else to do. I might as well read on in Isaiah 35. And what do we find? Well, the highway shall be there. And it shall be called the way of holiness. One scholar says, Alec Mottier says it's like a causeway.
It's like a causeway? Oh, like a A road through the ocean.
Yeah, like a raised path.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like in the sea, the tide would come in and turn it into an island, and when the tide goes down, there's like a stone path across the beach, kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the desert, I guess, like a clean and clear way, lifted up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's not all sandy. Like they can.
Right.
That's cool.
The unclean shall not pass over it. It shall belong to those who walk on the way. Even if they're fools, they shall not go astray. And I love that. Like, okay, John, you made a wee mistake here. It doesn't matter. You're okay. I got you. Don't beat yourself up here for your doubts.
I think that this raises another point about the way that the New Testament cites the Old Testament that is worth mentioning. When we talk about it, it seems like so nerdy and remote. Like, oh, well, he's referencing Isaiah, blah, blah, blah. And surrounding the passage, it has this, and you're like flipping it through your Bible. You're like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand any of this. And how did anyone get this? But there's such a cultural difference because John and most folks in those days, they had heard this in synagogue, all of these passages. They knew them all,
right,
like the back of their hand better. And so when you mention one line from a scripture, the whole context, it all just comes to mind for these guys. So they're communicating on a level with using the references to scripture that we 21st century secular people just coming new to the faith don't understand.
But we do it with other things, right? Like we reference sporting events or historical things in the country or, jokes we've seen on TV or pop music or whatever. Like we do this.
Yeah, I feel like, let's say, there's a bunch of firecrackers going off downstairs. To be like, oh, it's like the 4th of July down there, and there's so much to that.
Yeah,
that thing. Like
awkward example, but thanks.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Quite a bit of history there.
Our cultural. Oh, that is an awkward example. Yeah, I keep. I think it's just Isaiah that brings out the differences. This is.
The way I look at it is this: that get to 1812, we had to let you guys win so we could save the world from Napoleon.
Yeah, that's right. You did quite effectively. He'll be back though, right?
Yeah, but then he gets beaten again.
Yeah,
but there's one of those things, isn't it? Like we're just casually making jokes about the Napoleonic War, but we get the history, the joke, we get the story. It's part of our history. You walk around England and the statues of Wellington, the general, and roads called Wellesley Road, and all sorts of things like this.
Yeah,
and
I don't know Wellesley.
Same dude. That was his real name.
Huh.
So you get that kind of a thing, right? You get cultural references. I mean, a banknote with the president's face on it. We actually are quite capable of doing this. And the more biblically literate our church becomes, which it kind of is, the easier it is to draw all these connections and dots together.
Yeah, I got so frustrated as a kid when people would say, read your Bible, and because reading the Bible was so frustrating and difficult because you don't understand anything.
Right.
But the more you read the Bible, the more fun reading the Bible becomes.
It is fun.
And that's the interesting thing about it, because you start to see the connections and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the time to go into it all, but, Jesus is in the wilderness before his ministry. And, there's so many things. You had John the Baptist eating locusts. And, there's so many little ties and links here.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess the point is that if John is feeling a little bit silly for having doubted, there's a comforting word here, that this way that he's on is not a way he can fall off. He's going to be broken out of jail, spiritually speaking, by grace. And he's going to be kept on the way by that same grace. And he's headed somewhere. Where's he headed? Well, he's headed to Zion. They shall be, so the redeemed, that's a huge word.
The redeemed.
Yeah. Shall be, it's a word of slavery, but it's also a word to do with next of kin. Like, remember Boaz, the redeemer? Like, it's like
redeemer.
A relative.
It's a buying out, like being purchased.
And a right to do so.
Yeah,
Yeah, a right to buy this Redeemer, as yet somewhat out of view, is related to you and has a right to protect you and to get you out and to keep you going.
So to say you've been redeemed is like saying, I belong and have been purchased by the person by the one to whom I like actually have a real attachment. This
week, I got a call from someone. Well, last week I got a call from someone who lives in Foxchapel who believes they're related to me.
Oh yeah.
And so I went round to her house. It was really awesome. I wrote, "Dear Aunt Molly, I'll come round and see you." And I went round, and we got our family trees out, hers and mine. And we weren't really getting anywhere. There was lots of Shuttleworth, but not really getting anywhere. And then there was a handwritten note on the back of one page that said Gawthorpe Hall, which is our family house from the 15th century.
You have a family house from the 15th century?
Well, I mean, I don't have it. Some other dude does, but that's it. So we found a link, actually, interestingly. It's old. But I was very excited to have someone in Foxchapel that I was related to.
Yeah.
It probably is my 16th cousin once removed, so not a close relative, but I was super excited about this.
Yeah.
It was really good. It felt like family. And to think that Jesus, the Redeemer, or God, the Redeemer, is a father.
Huh. Yeah.
That's a much closer relationship.
It's as close as it gets.
It doesn't get closer.
Yeah.
The bride of Christ, the father of the adopted children. These are the two closest relationships that you can have. And we have them. And he shall return and come to Zion with singing. The ransomed of the Lord shall return. We will return. And we're going to come into Zion, the promised land. And remember, every prophecy has this immediate, intermediate, ultimate fulfillment. So literally, we're going to come home. You can imagine in Babylon them holding on to this.
Yeah.
But, now Jesus is here. We're home. And actually, when he comes back, we're home. And each home gets better.
Yeah. And for John the Baptist, it's interesting because, like...
Where is he?
John, when he said, "Where's John headed?" I almost said, "Pardon the pun," because like he got decapitated, right? Like, in the politics of his day, he was put to death, and so, what became of John? He, in an intermediate sense, is with the Lord. We would say. And in an ultimate sense is waiting on the fulfillment of all this stuff, just like we are.
Right.
It's crazy to think.
It is. And Jesus is saying, don't let this suffering make you stumble. But even if you stumble, I still got you.
Because there's a pathway that you can't
fall off.
Even the fools won't lose it.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the fools that belong on it. Yeah.
That's an encouraging thing. To be when you're navigating through life, and seeking to be faithful. I think oftentimes we can think, well, okay, I haven't done this right. I haven't done that right. Like, am I falling off the path? And but God actually is capable of keeping us on the path. Like that's where the security resides.
For sure, absolutely, for sure. The God that saved you is the God that keeps you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks. What I'd love to do next week is just talk a little bit about the whole teaching of the whole year. And then even look ahead to next year a bit, because we've got a lot planned for next year with 1 Corinthians.
Yeah.
That you and I are working on at the moment.
It's going to be fun.
That's 5 months.
Yeah.
And
buckle up, church.
We'd quite like to do Sermon on the Mount, and then this whole thing next Advent, right? Looking at all of the big story of everything from creation and fall through to exile and return, and how they're all fulfilled in Jesus. So I'd love to talk a bit about next year's vision for teaching, but also kind of recap the whole of this year. Yeah, it's been a big year. Yeah, it's been great. It's been fun. Yeah. Well, cheers. Hopefully they like it. They do. It's a relief. Would they say Isaiah or Isaiah? I don't know. That's a great question. I'll have to ask them.
Yeah. After the podcast.
Yeah. Yes, right. Yeah, sorry. When they finish singing.
Yeah.
This has been a podcast of Christchurch Fox Chapel. We're very, very glad that you would join us. Thanks for listening, as always. And if you've got a testimony or something you'd like to share, we would love to hear from you. God bless.
Cheers.
See you very soon.